Then in November of 2009, there was a leak of thousands of documents and emails from the primary climate data center in England, the East Anglia University Climate Research Unit, one of 3 primary climate data centers on Earth. And it was immediately clear that the scientists there were not being objective. The deeper we dug, the more clear it became that temperature data from East Anglia had been totally reworked to serve the needs of the global warming advocates. And collusion between the head of that English unit and the man behind that famous hockey stick chart in the U.S. came out in the email. ClimateGate was major news in much of the world, and it was all over the internet. But it was essentially ignored by the biased Big Three network newscast in the United States. In the UK, the Daily Telegraph speculated this could be the end of anthropogenic global warming. At this point, our attention turned to investigations of the weather data at the 2 primary government data centers in the United States. And at those centers, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Agency's National Climate Data Center and NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies, data has become so commingled, it's hard to tell exactly who has led the way on the data maneuvering. Look at this. In the mid-1990s, the U.S. climate centers cut the number of temperature observation points used to produce their world temperature average from about 6,000 to 3,000. And then later they kept trimming it on down until they got down to 1,700 points. They were cutting the number of thermometers used at a time when the Internet was adding tens of thousands of temperature points online for immediate access. In the process, they eliminated all the measurements from the cooler mountain locations. They dropped many cooler rural locations in favor of city observations, which are warmed by the urban heat island effect, not CO2. And they dropped almost all of the cold polar locations. And this chart shows the predictable result. The bars are the temperatures. They skyrocketed as the number and locations of the observation points was manipulated. What a scam. And this is another chart of the same effect. Temperatures in the pink soar as the observation points in blue are cut. But you see, these changes they made did not have any impact on the readings from any individual observation points. So then they announced that they had to go back and adjust the older years' data because, well, those old thermometers produced temperatures that were too warm. So they reworked and lowered the old temperature data, which had the impact of making the more recent years relatively warmer. Even though the mainstream media didn't cover these revelations, the internet and talk radio did to some extent, and some cable channels touched on it. And voila, look at this. A Scientific American poll shows that science readers, at least, have abandoned the global warming bandwagon. But do not think for a second that the global warming issue is dead. It's not by a long shot. The power, money power, is on the other side. It's our tax money, passed out as research dollars. For 2011, at least $2.4 billion in the U.S. federal budget alone. Now follow this. The government officials send the money to research centers and environmental organizations who produce research papers for the United Nations IPCC. They pay salaries to their officials and their researchers, and those people then make political donations back to the political parties and their candidates, who are the same people, the elected officials, who make the grants. Now, please understand, I have no personal arguments with the environmental organizations. They work to protect our planet, good work. And I don't have any argument with the millions of people who support these worthwhile organizations. And I certainly support clean air, clean water, and protection of the species, and leaving Earth clean and natural for our children. But I do not like the global warming scare tactics that have been embraced, and I have a passion to overcome the bad science behind the global warming theory. The situation now has become a serious issue in our lives in these last few years as the Federal Environmental Agency sets out to regulate carbon dioxide as what they call a pollutant. In California, by the way, the state is taking even more aggressive action than the federals. Now, all of this is an attack on the money in our pockets and our way of life. If these regulations go into effect, the cost of food and lights and heating and air conditioning, just hunkering down at home to get through a winter, travel, and every manufactured item we buy is going to go up, up, up. Now a dozen states, led by Virginia and Texas, are challenging the EPA ruling, but the bad science has led to bad regulation, and the scientific debate has now become a legal issue. And there are a rash of other lawsuits being filed against energy companies for environmental damage. The entire issue is moving into the courts. Al Gore and many other politicians in the UN, IPCC, and the Environmental Protection Agency say that the future of Earth is in the balance. I know that is not so, but our civilized way of life, our homes, and everything our forefathers worked to accomplish to make life good does lie in the balance. My friends, I've studied all these scientific papers. I know there is no significant man-made global warming now. There hasn't been any in the past, and there is no reason to fear any in the future.